So you get activated cells in the brain, the glial cells in particular, the astrocytes and the microglia go into an alarm state, and they put out chemicals that create excitation, and they stop doing such a good job in picking up the trash and protecting the brain. The astrocytes, the wonderful, beautiful star-shaped cells in our brain that outnumber the neurons, normally clear out the neurotransmitter glutamate after the neurons fire, but when they're in this inflamed state, they don't do a good job at that. So the excitation becomes a chronic irritation, and you become more irritable and you become more hyperresponsive. And as this goes on, your thinking can get confused. It's like having static on your phone. And also, the energy production of the brain is compromised during the state of inflammation. So overall, you're basically compromising the whole coordination apparatus of the brain because the neurons don't work so well. The BDNF gets messed up, and things start to spiral down, and unless you aggressively try to turn it around, and that's why I advocate all of the different lifestyle interventions, because you don't want to like exercise a lot and smoke 3 packs a day and work in a lead plant.
Right.
You've got to really pull all of this stuff together to especially when you're sick. When you're sick, you really need high-powered attempts to make everything better so the brain can pull out of the hole it's in when it has an inflammatory problem.
Just take another 10 seconds because you dropped an acronym on us there that I didn't understand. BDNF, what's that?
That's what John Rady was talking about, and Perlmutter talked. John Rady just called it the miracle grow for the brain that's stimulated by exercise.
Okay. Now I want to follow up on...
brain-derived growth factor.
That's what it stands for. Okay.
Well, let me take a step back here for just a moment and really comment on what Tiffany was talking about in terms of neurotoxins. And I think the, bar none, most important neurotoxin under-recognized is, in fact, glucose, the very thing that we were all taught that the brain is desperate for and prefers. The reality is that even subtle elevations of blood sugar ultimately lead to what Dr. Herbert was talking about, and that is inflammation, and beyond inflammation, an increase of what is called free radical mediated stress, the action of these chemicals that are called free radicals that actually rust our DNA, our RNA, our proteins, and our fat. So we now understand that really one of the cornerstones of brain degeneration is, in fact, the very blood sugar measurements that you have at your doctor's office. We've known for several years that you can predict shrinkage of the hippocampus, of the area of the brain that mediates memory, that we want to keep fluffy. You can predict who is going to get shrinkage of the hippocampus based upon a simple blood test, which is the fasting blood sugar. And in the August 8th edition, 2013 of the New England Journal of Medicine was a very powerful article that indicated that there is a direct relationship for risk for developing dementia, a disease for which there is no treatment, based upon the fasting blood sugar. And why the study was so important was this study revealed that fasting blood sugars of 105 and 110 already strongly predicted who would become a dementia patient. Again, a disease for which there is no treatment. A situation that is under our control. Our blood sugar is directly related, obviously, to our dietary choices. Now, the issue with blood sugar is really quite simple. When blood sugar becomes elevated, it binds to proteins in our bodies and in our brains in a process called glycation and creates these products called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. And that relates beautifully to what Dr. Herbert has been talking about, because when you increase the AGEs in the body and in the brain, this becomes a very important upregulator of that exact process, inflammation. And make no mistake about it, inflammation is the cornerstone of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's represents that same process of inflammation that we all know about when our knee is inflamed or we're bitten by a mosquito bite. by a mosquito, the brain becomes inflamed in Alzheimer's, as Dr. Herbert was so eloquent in describing, and the tissues secrete these chemicals called cytokines that are directly toxic to brain cell function. And it turns out that the area of the brain, at least in Alzheimer's, most susceptible is, in fact, that area called the hippocampus. But the empowering part of this story is that shrinkage of the hippocampus is actually reversible. And, you know, I could probably speak for everybody on the panel today in stating that when we went to medical school, we were told that we were given a finite number of brain cells. What was it, 100 billion? And that by the time we were 18 years of age, that was it. And then every beer you drank after that, you'd lose 20,000 brain cells or whatever the magic number was. But now we know the brain has this incredible ability to regenerate itself, a process called neurogenesis. And that specific activity, growing back your brain's memory center, as wonderfully described in February of 2011 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, is brought on by performing aerobic exercise. The empowering part of that story is if you cut your carbohydrates and therefore your blood sugar goes down, and you engage in aerobic exercise, not only can you stave off the decline of memory that we have come to expect, but you can actually reverse that memory decline, as wonderfully published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science.
Okay,